I think of all the abandoned stations on the Underground network, the one I get asked to cover the most is British Museum. I suspect it's because of the name. I mean, the British Museum is a famous institution and a major tourist attraction. It makes sense that it would have a station, right? So, why doesn't it? Anymore? Well, there are two possibilities. There's the interesting one and the real one. We'll start with the real one. British Museum Station was built by the Central London Railway, what would later become the Central Line. Originally it was going to be called Bloomsbury, but they changed their mind before opening. It actually opened in 1900. It was here on High Holborn. The building at surface level originally had a flat roof, but offices were soon added on top of that. The Central London Railway liked to take full advantage of their prime inner-city location by renting premises out. The line was electrified from the very start and was clad in white tiles to emphasise the cleanliness of electric traction. Well, half of it was. The lower half was clad in barge boards to save money. British Museum had wooden platforms, but these were replaced with stone in 1910 due to fire risk. There was a siding, so it was possible to terminate trains here. Now, if you know central London, you'll know that there's another tube station on High Holborn. Well, actually there are two, but we're not talking about Chancery Lane. At least not today. The station I'm talking about is Holborn Station. It's very close to British Museum, and indeed to the British Museum. It was opened in 1906 by the Great Northern, Piccadilly and Brompton Railway, also known as the Piccadilly Tube. The obvious question here is, why build a separate station when British Museum is so nearby? The answer is, well, they probably would have done. The Piccadilly Tube was part of Underground Electric Railways of London, and they were great enthusiasts of integrating different lines and modes of transport. But unfortunately, the Act of Parliament that had authorised the Piccadilly Tube specified a route towards Aldwych that couldn't be made to intersect with British Museum. The Aldwych branch was a massive flop, so nobody won here. UERL liked the idea of building an underground corridor between Holborn and British Museum, and so did the Central London Railway, but the engineering challenges were too great to justify the cost. They did have an early form of out-of-station interchange from 1908. In 1913, UERL acquired the Central London Railway, so now they owned both stations. Rather than try to connect them, they decided to just give British Museum the chop. They got permission to re-site in 1914. Holborn was just a more convenient station. It was on a major road junction, and it had a connection with the Kingsway tram tunnel. And fortunately, the Central London Railway passed right alongside. While closing British Museum was one of the first things they planned to do, they didn't actually get around to it until 20 years later, thanks to the First World War getting in the way. In 1930, Holborn was being rebuilt to modernise it, and UERL took the opportunity to stick a couple of platforms in there on the Central Line. They had to reapply for permission, the old powers having expired. In 1933, the same year that the entire Underground was taken over by London Transport, British Museum was closed. The building remained in place until 1989, when it was demolished, and the space where the platforms were is now used as an engineering store. Or there's the more interesting story, which is that the station was haunted. The story goes thus. In the British Museum there is an artefact known as the Unlucky Mummy, which is incorrect because it's not a mummy at all, it's a coffin lid. It's estimated to date from around 950 to 900 BC. We know very little of the owner, other than that she was a woman, that she was Egyptian, and that she was of high status. The occupant of the coffin is often known as Amun-Ra, which again is wrong. Amun-Ra was an ancient Egyptian deity, the chief of the gods. The museum speculated that this woman was a priestess of the cult of Amun-Ra, but we just don't know for sure. The reason this coffin lid has become known as the Unlucky Mummy is because it is supposedly cursed. Bad luck will befall anyone associated with it. Supposedly its discoverer lost his hand in a freak hunting accident. His companions died at sea. A journalist who borrowed it lost her mother to a fall, and there have supposedly been many, many others. It's even been blamed for the sinking of the Titanic, because apparently it was in the hold when it hit the iceberg. Like all these stories, closer investigation reveals that the curse is nothing more than a lot of coincidences, confirmation bias, and outright fabrications. I mean, come on, if it was on the Titanic, why is it now in the British Museum? Duh. It's clear that this curse is a lot of bull... Hey, what happened to my NFTs? Sorry about that. Anyway, another part of the story is that the ghost haunts a passage leading from the museum to the station and the abandoned platforms. Supposedly, her shrieks and moans terrify staff, objects fly around, and she has even been responsible for the abduction of at least 2 passengers. Well, there never was such a passage, there are no platforms anymore, and no source seems to have the kind of information that would allow these outlandish supernatural events to be confirmed. Despite this, the ghost has apparently also been seen and heard at Holborn. I guess she had to change her commute, the same as every other Central Line passenger. Well, I hope you enjoyed this accursed tale from the tube. If you did, please do click the like button and consider subscribing for more. If I get haunted by any ancient Egyptian priestesses, I'll let you know. Actually, I'll let Brendan Fraser know. Anyway, I'd like to thank my donors on Ko-fi and Patreon. You are the apocryphal passage to my abandoned station. And I'll see you all again very soon for another tale from the tube.